Okay, and welcome back to Module 3 of Prompt Engineering 101 for Journalists. I'm Joe Amditis, and this time we're going to talk about my personal favorite topic, automation. Most people, when they think of using chatbots and generative AI, usually jump right to getting the bots involved. Obviously, that's sort of what we're here for. But I would argue, and I believe it's true, otherwise I wouldn't argue it, that automation is actually the much more useful component as compared to generation. And I say this because being able to extract the processes and the tasks and the usefulness and the power of these chatbot tools and their generative capabilities and liberate them, so to speak, from the actual chat interface that you would use on the web browser or mobile app or desktop app is really where you start to see the true value. Not only because it is somewhat inefficient to have to navigate to a browser window or open up an app every time you want to do something, but also because a lot of the tasks that these tools are great for, especially when it comes to repetitive tasks, would be much better if they were automated or at least systematized in some way. And what I mean by that is the ability to take things like form responses or incoming structured information that typically takes a similar or same format and then feed it into a predetermined process or set of prompts is by default a much more efficient and effective way to get value out of these tools. So today and during the rest of this module, we are going to focus on exactly how you can do that, A, without needing any code, and B, in a way that doesn't cost you a lot of money, and in some cases maybe even doesn't cost any money outside of the API costs. So we're going to show you how to do that with a simple no-code automation tool called Zapier, and we're going to try a few different examples of how you can take the APIs for these same tools and prompts and bots that we've been playing around with so far and bring them out into the real world, so to speak, and connect them and have them talk to your other apps. So in order to do that, we're going to need to access the sort of behind the scenes dashboard and controls for these tools. And we'll use OpenAI and ChatGPT for this, but the same principles apply for Claude and Gemini as well. So in order to do that, you're going to have to, instead of going to the regular chatgpt.com or chat.openai.com, you're going to go to the platform, which used to be called the Playground. And to get there, you just type into your browser platform.openai.com/playground. And that will bring you to the back end here. You'll log in with the same account that you use to access ChatGPT, and you'll be taken to this page. It may be slightly different for you depending on whether or not you've already accessed this page. You may have to log in again, but essentially you have these four options here on the left in the sidebar. You can see here I've already created an organization. You're going to go through and do that. I would recommend going up to your profile here and create an organization. You need to generate an API key. And basically get yourself set up. And it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. All you really need to know is that you need to enter your profile information. You will need to enter a payment method. Get yourself set up with an API key and an organizational ID, and then we will be able to go forward from there. But what we're going to do now is we're going to show you what the Playground is. And if you look here, you'll notice that there's four things on the sidebar here. We have our prompts, our real-time, assistance, and TTS, which is text-to-speech. The prompts section of the sidebar allows you to play around and save and document and archive different prompts with different models using different tools. And we can see here which tools are available, whether it's file search, which is just context or retrieval augmented generation, web search, and then any other functions that you'd like to write or call. And we're going to stay away from this, number one, because I'm not very good at this and I don't fully understand it enough to be able to teach you. And number two, because I just haven't used it, and this is Prompting 101. So what we're going to do is you can use this whole interface here to set up and test and iterate the different prompts and messages to see what kind of outputs you get to make sure that when you finally want to deploy them in real time or in the real world in your work, they're generally consistent. Even though these are non-determinative tools, which just means that you're not going to get the same responses every time, but we can get close enough. And we've already done a lot of this in the first two modules by testing our prompts and seeing what responses we get and what we need to change in order to get that. So you can literally take existing prompts that you've been using in the chat interface, and you can bring them over into the playground. The biggest difference is that unlike in the ChatGPT browser interface, you have access to what is called the system message. And what this is the set of hidden instructions that every chat interface or chat conversation has behind the scenes that instructs the model how it should behave when responding and interacting with users. And this is a really powerful tool because not only can it act as a sort of additional context background, but it can really give the bot a role or a function in a similar way that a custom GPT functions. It's almost identical to the custom GPT. Typically, there's a set of system instructions that's associated with the standard chat interface, but for this case, you get to set your own. And you can see it sort of leads you on here and says, you are a helpful assistant, dot, dot, dot. You can click here and you can tell it what you want it to do. You can say, I want it to help me parse transcripts from interviews as part of my reporting process at a local newsroom in New Jersey. And it will go ahead and it'll generate some basic system message or custom system instructions for this conversation set. And as it's doing that, you can, play around with choose different models that you want. You can set the format. Oh, boom, here we go. So it's already given us a pretty decent set of structured instructions here. It's got step-by-step instructions for the bot. It gives us the output format. It gives us some examples of what good and bad responses look like, and some additional notes and constraints, just like we saw in our prompt anatomy back in Module 1. So I'm going to get rid of this because we already have some that I'd like to show you, and as an example of how we can use these bots to work on, let's say, specific projects. And once you've set this all up and you're happy, you're comfortable with the outputs, you'll be able to take that and bring it into a tool called Zapier. Now, Zapier is, as I said before, a no-code automation tool that lets you click and drag and set up everything that you would normally do in here, but you can do it in here and allow those prompts to escape the confines of the ChatGPT interface. So from this homepage, you can see a variety of different options. You can see some stuff here from my own account, some unfinished drafts. We can start from scratch by creating a Zap, a table, an interface, a chatbot, or a canvas. We're just going to basically ignore these four for now and focus only on our Zaps. If you don't want to start from scratch, if this is already a little bit overwhelming, you can come up to the top here and you can explore the apps, or you can use their little beta AI tool here to just describe what you want to happen. And you can see the example, when I add a reaction in a Slack message, create a card in Trello. And this is what I mean when I say that the automation processes involved in this stuff can be honestly a lot more powerful than just simple generation. But the real magic happens when you combine these two and you use the generation components and tasks in concert with or as a slight layer in a larger workflow of automation. So if you're confused or if you just want some inspiration, we can come up here and we can explore our apps. We can see what type of apps and software integrations are available on Zapier. And for instance, they have some built-in ones. This allows you to format data, filter these steps based on the inputs you get so that not every Slack message you send is automatically triggering an automation. They even have more conditional logic for paths. If a certain file type is identified in a message, do this. If a different file type is identified, do that, and so forth. And there is a very, very large catalog of apps that are available for integration in these tools. So for our purposes, we are going to do a very simple automation to start, just to give you a sense of how this all works. We're going to take a Slack message, and every time there is a new Slack message, we are going to add it to a Google Sheet. So in order to set this up, we're going to start by clicking Start from Scratch with a Zap, and you can see their little Copilot beta process here where you can type in what you want, but ours is simple enough that we're going to start with our trigger. Now, our trigger is just the thing that starts the automation. And for our purposes, we are going to use a Slack message. So I'm going to click Slack, and you can see a sidebar has popped up here. And I'm going to just zoom this in so you can see it a little better. We'll bring this out. And right here, we're going to select the event. So we want the app is Slack. Our trigger event is going to be a new reaction is added to a message in a public channel. So we're going to click that, and right away we can see that we have to set up our account. So once you've gone ahead and clicked this, you will be able to integrate your account. You'll sign into Slack, a pop-up window will appear. You enter your information, you log in, you select your workspace, and once you're done, you will see your Slack integration appear here. We're going to use this main one that I have here, and boom, step one is complete. Now we've told it what app to look for, what action to look for that will start the automation, and what account we're going to be using. So I'll click continue, and we'll move to our configure step. Very simple. Again, we want to know what channel we want this to appear in. And I have a channel that is called Automation Test. So I'm going to type in AUT, and you can see there's our public channel, Automation Test. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send a message in that Automation Test channel and says, I send that message, and now there's a message in the channel so that when we go to test this, we have something to work with. Okay. So I want this automation to trigger whenever someone adds the squirrel emoji reaction to a message in our automation test channel. And let's say I want this automation to only trigger when a specific user, like a manager or an editor or an admin, sends this reaction. So I can go ahead and I can choose who I want to assign this automation to. For me, it's me, Joe Amditis. So anytime Joe Amditis adds a squirrel reaction to a message in the automation test channel, that will begin this automation. And I can rename it here. And you can see that has been updated here. So now I'm going to click continue. And now we're going to test this trigger to see if there is an existing example for this to use to build the rest of the automation. And we see here we have our first message. We can see the information and all the metadata. We can see the reaction that was added, the user who did it, the user real name, and all that information. Here is the content of the message. Here is the message timestamp, which serves as the sort of unique ID for that message. And it also is the thread ID down here in case we want to reply to threaded messages in the future. So we're going to continue with that selected record, and then we're going to be asked to choose the next step. So because I said we wanted to add the message to a Google Sheet, we're going to start a Google Sheet. We're going to go to sheets.new, which will open a new Google Sheet in our Google Drive. We're going to name this automation test, and we are going to add some header columns. So we would like our header columns we want to know the username, we want to know the timestamp, we want to know the message content, and we want to know, let's say we want to know a sentiment analysis. So this is going to come in handy later. I'm going to go ahead and freeze this. And now any new message, any new spreadsheet row that comes in will start on row number 2 and go forward. So we have our headers, we have our Google Sheet. I'm just going to set this to view only. Anyone with the link can view. Okay. So now when I come over here, I'm going to select Google Sheets down at the bottom, or if you don't see it, you can type up here and it will display the options and apps that are available. So now anytime a new Slack message appears with a squirrel emoji, we're going to do something in Google Sheets. So we choose the action and we want it to create a spreadsheet row. So we're going to select create spreadsheet row. We're going to make sure that the account is active. That's our account. We're good. We're going to continue. And now we're going to configure it. We're going to select the Google Drive that we want to use. For some reason, this just never updates when I do that. It doesn't matter. And now we're going to select our spreadsheet. We just created that automation test one. So it is the most recent one and it is at the top of the list. So, but if you are searching for it, or if it's not already, it was created in the past, you can search for it and then select the one you'd like. Our worksheet is going to be sheet number 1, which you can see down here at the bottom. And that's the only one in this spreadsheet, so we don't have to worry. Do we want to use our time zone setup? Do we want to use time zone setup on the spreadsheet to format data values? No. The username, the timestamp, the message content, and the sentiment. Here's our header rows. We can see them right here. And we are going to then insert using this plus button, or we can type a slash and that will appear it, or we can type manually. We can say what we want to put in there for every entry. But because each of these messages might be dynamic, we're going to go ahead and use the dynamic field mapping by clicking plus. And now you can see that we have a list of all the information from that initial message that was sent. So we're going to search for the username. Let's see here. We see username, and I can type in username, Joe Amditis. And now this is a dynamic chip. So And right now, the message came from me, so the username is Joe Amditis. But if I added a scroll reaction to a message from a coworker, their username would appear because this is a dynamic placeholder. Our timestamp is going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and find our timestamp here for the message. There we go. Message TS time. Our message content. We're going to type in text, message text. And if you click more, you can see the full message here. And our sentiment. Now we're going to leave the sentiment blank for now, and you'll see why later. That's where the generative AI stuff is going to come in. So for now, we're going to continue this, and we're going to have an opportunity to test it. So we have our new squirrel emoji reaction, triggers an automation that adds the content and timestamp and user information from that message to a new row in our newly created Google Sheet. So we're going to click test. It will go ahead and run that test, and it says the test was successful. A row was sent to Google Sheets about in 11 seconds. And we go back, and there we go. We have our message content, we have our timestamp, and there we go. So what I'm going to do now this, I can just publish this. It's named Untitled Zap right now, but it is now live. Let me just rename it. So now this is live. So now anytime I add a new message to our Slack channel here, if I come back over here and I send it, now it's not going to trigger that until I add the squirrel emoji, which I'm going to do now. And each time you trigger one of these, or each time you set up one of these automations, there is a time that it takes to sort of run these. A lot of them happen within 2 minutes, depending on the cycle. But eventually we should see this new row appear here. And there we go. There it is. Immediately logged. So this is great. Now you can already see how this would be useful. You can apply this to a range of different options, but this isn't generative AI. So where does generative AI come in? Assuming, let's say that this is user feedback or any kind of information that we want to add some sentiment analysis. So I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to edit our Zap. And here is where it's important to have that pro account where you can do more than 2 steps. So for here, I'm going to add a step in the middle because I don't just want to add the message itself. I would like to add a generative AI step layered in here that allows me to analyze the sentiment. So I have ChatGPT pinned, but if you type in chat at the top, you'll see chat comes up. Anthropic comes up for Claude. Gemini comes up for Google AI Studio. For us, we're going to use ChatGPT from OpenAI. And again, we're going to go through that same process. Our action event is going to analyze text sentiment. Now, you don't have to analyze text, use the analyze text sentiment feature. You can simply send a conversation to chat, and it's just like a conversation with a message in the normal ChatGPT window. I'm going to click conversation because this is the most versatile one. So if you've set up your API and your integration information in the ChatGPT playground over here, where you have your API information, again, here, where you get API keys, you should be good. But if you haven't, go ahead and do that. I'm going to select an account. So for me, I'm going to select our main Center for Cooperative Media organization project, and that's going to allow me to access a variety of things. So number one, we have our user message. So we're pretending like this is a message from another user sent. What we want to do is we want to set a user message, and I'm going to say analyze the sentiment of the text below and print a single word that classifies the general sentiment of the Slack message from the user. And I'm going to click here and I'm going to add the username, Joe Amditis. Then I'm going to add a colon, a line break, and I'm going to enter the message. So here we go, text from the message. The message text, hi, this is my first message, right? And we can see that here. We can also expand it again and see this is my first test message. Then we can select our model, and you can see here, we're just going to use, again, we're going to use GPT-4o. We can even select GPT-4o latest so that if they update the models in the future, we don't have to come back and change it. The next field here is our memory key. So if we would like to have chat remember the context and not just treat every new message in this automation as a brand new conversation, we can add a specific unique identifier that will track those conversations. So for us, if we wanted to do that, we can come in here and we can find a unique identification, which could serve as the context for this. So for us, we can look for TS because before our message TS, this is the thread for that message. So if we were going to do this in the thread, a threaded conversation, we can add that. We're not going to do that for this because it's not necessary. We can also attach an image. If the message from the user contains an image, that information will be pulled into the metadata of Slack. We're not going to do that for now, again, because we don't need to. So our username is user. We can add and change that to the username of the actual person who sent it. In case we want the bot to respond to them. In this case, we're not going to, so we don't need to. We can also name our assistant. We're just going to name this CCM bot. All of this is really not relevant. It doesn't really do anything to the quality of the responses, but if later down the line you want to have a more dynamic response and query back and forth between the user, you can add these things. And here again, we're seeing, here's our assistant instructions. And if you remember from the platform here, these are all the same threads and fields that we saw in our assistant or our prompt playground. And for us, we are going to, you are a helpful assistant who analyzes the sentiment of Slack messages. Your job is to, and that's it. And this can be way more complicated, but for our purposes, we're going to just keep this super basic as a demonstration. We're going to set our max tokens. We want to set our max tokens pretty low for this because we're not going to need a lot of tokens. We're only going to have it do one word. So let's just set this to 250 tokens. And we're going to keep the temperature at 1.0. The temperature is the amount of creativity that you would like the bot to employ, or amount of leeway that you want it when it comes to its responses. So for us, we don't want a lot of creativity, so we want to keep the temperature, let's say around 0.5. The range is from 0 to 2, 2 being the most creative freedom, 0 meaning zero creative freedom. And if you mess with the temperature, you don't mess with the top P. Personally, I've never messed with the top P or changed it in my entire career doing this. It has never really impacted my ability to use these tools. So here we go. Quick review. We've got our user message with our dynamic information that changes based on the message that we've added a squirrel reaction to. And we've set our model. We've set we're leaving the memory key and image alone. We've indicated that the username will change based on who's coming from. We've given the bot a name, and we've set some very basic assistant instructions that will carry with it on every interaction. We've changed the temperature and the max tokens to fit our needs, and we're going to click continue, and we're going to test this step. We can review all of it here. We're going to test the step, and we're going to see the response we get. So here it is. It was very quick. And again, if you don't want to go back and forth testing this in Zapier, that's where the playground comes in handy, because you can do all of this exact same stuff here and fine tune it and make sure that your outputs are correct. Then you just copy and paste this over into Zapier, run it once or twice as a test, and we can see that the message, the sentiment that it's given, this message is neutral. And in fact, that is exactly what it is. So now we've got this intermediate step between our trigger and our final output. And so we're going to continue, and we're going to come back into this step here, and we're going to come back down to our sentiment field, and we're going to insert the response from ChatGPT, which now appears in our selection options here. And if we click here, we can see all the different elements here, but we only need the reply. The reply is neutral. So now I hit continue. And if I test this step again, when we come back over to our Google Sheet, we'll see that the latest row has sentiment in the final field column. So right there is our first example of how to integrate generative AI capabilities and use them in concert with an automation that allows us to have one of our apps talk to a series of other apps. And if we wanted to, we can expand this. We can add an additional step that then sends that response or the entire contents of the spreadsheet row back to Slack in a threaded reply. So for instance, if you were to drop a block of text into a channel and then use the reaction emoji to trigger the automation, and the instructions for the Zapier automation that were sent to ChatGPT were to say, for instance, summarize this text in the user message, and then return that summary back to a spreadsheet or back to that Slack channel, you can already see how you can start to build on this and bring the functionality of these generative AI tools into the spaces where you and your coworkers often interact, whether that's Slack, whether you'd like to pull in emails, you'd like to send this to Teams, you want to send this to a Google Doc, and on and on and on. And we're going to get into some more complex automations in the next video. So I will see you there.